within probably 3 to 5 minutes, and I knew we were in some pretty serious trouble. The biggest delta drop from being super excited, having worked on it for pretty much 6 months straight, to like all of a sudden down, like
in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, in a matter of minutes.
Every day, there are people all over the world looking to create better lives for themselves and their families. These are moms or retirees or college students, everyday people. They're freedom builders, and these are their stories.
Today I have a very exciting interview. We brought in Zach from Live a Great Story. He has a very inspirational story of how he got started and the growth throughout the year. So thank you very much for coming on.
Stoked to be here.
Why don't you start off by just telling us all who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Zach, and I'm the founder of a brand called Live a Great Story. And essentially, we just want to inspire people to be the author of their story and like write it. You got to go out and take control of your life. And we make a bunch of products that kind of encourage people to go out into the world, and is a powerful message that has a big impact on people. And we just want to spread it far and wide.
Where did all this stem from? What's your background? What did you do before Live a Great Story?
So I've pretty much always been creative entrepreneurial. I started my first kind of business in high school, and so around 16, 17, I have just been trying to figure out what that means. Who am I? What am I doing? What am I good at? What are my superpowers? And how can I kind of weave all that together to create a life that I'm proud of? When I was 22, I bought a one-way ticket to Europe, and that was definitely like the best decision I made. I think travel's crucial for a great story, but through that experience of just kind of vagabonding around Europe for about 7 months, I met tons of people from all different backgrounds and had crazy conversations. And so when I was just kind of inspired by everybody's story, and when I got back from traveling, I grabbed a can of red spray paint and I went underneath a bridge here in Austin, underneath Mopac, and just spray painted Live a Great Story. And more or less people started taking pictures of it and hashtagging it, and it started to spread. And that was about 6 years ago now, and just pretty much been trying to have fun with it ever since.
Came back from Europe, graffitied up Mopac Bridge, and how did the business start from there? What was next, or what was your first product?
From the spray paint, it took about a year for it actually to turn into something. At that point, I was kind of like, I don't want to start a business. I'd moved to San Diego. I wanted a job. I had been like trying to start things. None of them were anywhere near successful. But when I moved to San Diego with like no connects, no nothing, like pretty much a backpack and a bike and a camera, it was a lot more difficult than I expected. And so that was the second time that I spray painted Live a Great Story, because I spray painted in Austin and then realized that people were taking pictures of it, thought it was kind of cool. But then in San Diego, I spray painted it because I needed it for myself. It was like, keep going, all great stories have ups and downs. This is a roller coaster. Like, even though this is difficult right now, at some point you're gonna look back on this and like really appreciate it. And so when I spray painted in San Diego, that's kind of where it started taking more of a brand idea. People started taking pictures of it again. I was like, let's make this into some stickers and start passing them out. That turned into buttons. People would take off the buttons and hand them to other people, and it would kind of do this chain reaction of spreading this inspiration. And so at one point, I was just kind of like sitting on the couch with my buddy. He's like, dude, I think you're onto something here. Like, you should probably keep going with this. And at that point, that was the first time that I kind of consciously made the decision to see where this would go and start like taking it a little bit further, getting more serious about it. And so that's when the stickers came out and the buttons. We were printing shirts in my, like, probably smaller than this room, like screen printing, made a homemade screen press.
Nice.
And so it just kind of really started one step at a time. People started really taking them places. I think that's the coolest thing, is all of a sudden people started popping up on Instagram with stickers in other countries or other cities or things like that. And so it just kind of started flowing a little bit at a time into eventually like, there's something like really big here, I think, that we can tap into. And that's kind of like the origin story for the first couple of years.
Who was your first customer, and how did you make that first sale to them?
That's a great question. The first round of shirts that we made, my buddy in San Diego, he had done a lot of screen printing, and so he definitely knew how to do all that. So we went to Home Depot, I think we got a lot of scrap wood, and then we bought these hinges from an art store and made our own screen press and printed, I think, 24 or 30 shirts. And out of those, we had to hand dry them with a blow dryer, or actually like a heat gun, and you would look away for a second and look back and the shirt would be burned. So I don't even know, out of those first like 24, probably 18 were sellable. And so it was definitely like a very tight circle. Like the first round of people that bought the shirts were acquaintances or friends. And then slowly those kind of like the stickers started spreading and finding people on social media, and they wanted more, and it kind of very organically through social media is really like the first like external out of my initial friend group.
Right. So then at what point did you decide to like take this full time? Because at the beginning, it sounds like you're still working at a bar, other jobs. You kind of thought it was like a side hustle to start, is that right? At what point were you like, this is my job, this is what I do for a living?
So I was still like kind of trying to find a job or like trying to figure out what this was in the very beginning. So this was in, I think 2014. So this is definitely like a year, 16 months in, somewhere in that time frame of when it started. And so at that point, I was traveling with my girlfriend. And so we were kind of traveling around in Austin, hanging out. And my granddad got sick at that point. And so he was in Houston. So we got to like swing through Houston on the way to Nashville. And he ended up passing away while we were in Nashville. He was like a patriarchal figure in our family. He, I think, embodied a lot of the entrepreneurial spirit. He was a wildcatter, like oil fields, and kind of had crafted his own life and his own journey. My middle name is his last name, so I always felt this kind of connection there. He had always given it his all, right? So he was always kind of going after it. He would be a little bit successful and then like risk it all again and like make it back and then risk it. And so a lot of that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and I've just kind of felt this transfer of that spirit. And it was really then that I was like, I'm gonna give this everything. Like I'm just gonna go all in until I can't anymore and just like see how far I can take this. It's almost like it's like a responsibility to maybe me, my family, and also like the world. I think that it's always been a feeling that Live a Great Story is something bigger than just me. There's like all of us are involved in it. And so it was at that time, and it was wild. I was like in his funeral, and my phone was just like started ringing off the hook. And I like when I walked outside afterwards, I picked it up, and I had all these messages from people that Reese Witherspoon had taken a picture next to Live a Great Story on her Instagram, like not a week before I had put that up, and she was in New Orleans and took a picture next to it. And so it's this crazy situation where I kind of had mentally committed, and then it was almost like an immediate affirmation that was like the move, right? Like I walked outside and Reese, and like ever since then, it's been like, let's run this like as far as possible.
Give us a little more insight like where the business is at today.
This year, from a number standpoint, I think we're on track to do probably about $1 million in sales. That really comes from stickers and flags and then shirts. So those are like our three main products. It's at a really cool time because ever since getting focused on sales, it's created an opportunity to kind of grow a more solid team. I never really wanted to build like a specific product focused business. Like I didn't want to just have a t-shirt company that said Live a Great Story. Like I wanted something more. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to host events. I wanted to bring people together in all these other areas. So now getting really focused on one thing has helped the opportunity to kind of like now diversify into these other areas. We have a monthly storytelling event here in Austin, and then we're like working on a conference in October.
As entrepreneurs, it's really often to talk about all of the successes and all the things that went well. And people are probably watching this right now and thinking like, man, everything's gone right for Zach. But I know there's been a lot of hardships and challenges along the way. Share some of those stories with everyone.
It's almost like a daily thing. I mean, to get into entrepreneurship, you have to freaking buckle up and like be ready for the roller coaster. We're, 5 years into this, and there's been like so many swings. The biggest, most recent overcoming was for sure launching the Kickstarter and then that not working out. So I had, I think, a team of 8 of us kind of pushed pause on a lot of areas, dove really deep into what we're about, what's the impact we want to make, who are we? And then from there, out of that started coming this idea for the guide and the product. And so we had 4 months to launch it and just head down for 4 months. It was the coolest sprint that I've done in that terms. We were just like grinding, meetings, calls, like everything was lined up. really, and it felt really smooth. And what was wild is we had kind of a Kickstarter launch party. And, you know, the idea behind launching a Kickstarter is that you want to pre-sell it to people so that when it goes live, everybody's like, I want this right now, and they buy it, and then that kind of hacks the algorithm.
Right. And
I hit that button, and it was pretty much crickets. Like, it was like a wild feeling. Within probably 3 to 5 minutes after hitting that button, I knew we were in some pretty serious trouble. The biggest delta drop from being super excited to launch this product and like having worked on it for pretty much 6 months straight to like all of a sudden down, like
in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, in a matter of minutes. So much of that experience, realizing that there needed to be some serious changes. About a month later, all of those changes getting implemented pretty quickly. It was almost like, in the grand scheme of it all, an instantaneous feeling that you have to go through the struggle to make it to the next step. And so all of the lessons learned and all the struggles and all of the ideas going through that returned so quickly about a month later. So that's when our rebuilt the Shopify, launched all of our marketing, did all these new steps. And now we're, you know, pretty much on track for probably like a 600 to 900% growth from last year to this year. And it all happened because the Kickstarter failed. So it's like this really cool testament of like, you got to try it, you got to risk it, and you learn. And like sometimes your biggest failures are your biggest successes, but they're not how you think they're going to be. I think being a founder by yourself is really difficult. It's like all on your shoulders. That's like late nights or early mornings or whatever, and you're the only one doing it, and people just don't get it. Like, that shows up almost like on a daily basis sometimes, right? Where you're like in it for yourself. For me, so I was living in San Diego at the time, so I moved to San Diego 8 months after that, probably like kind of started Live a Great Story. And I quit my job too early. So I had a house, I had to pay rent, and then I was like, okay, cool, this is gonna take off, right? And it just didn't, like I expected it to. For like pretty much 2 years straight, I didn't sleep. I slept not in my house because I was Airbnb-ing it. So I would Airbnb my house on the weekends to be able to pay rent, go sleep in my car, crash at a friend's house. Like that first year was like 120 nights where I was like not in my house, but that afforded me the opportunity to keep building Live a Great Story. It was like this trade-off where it's like, okay, I can either get a part-time job at a coffee shop or something pretty boring, or I can like sleep in my car. And I was like, this is a no-brainer. You know, it's always in those moments where things are really tough, things are down, like life's not that great, that I always try to remember like, yo, this is all part of the story. Like, just because like you're going to look back on this and you're going to be able to tell this experience and use this to inspire other people and like be proud of this moment. So like being able to do that in the moment, I think is really valuable.
If you were starting it all over today, what would you do differently?
From the jump, like all of it?
Everything. Knowing what you know now.
Oh man.
With all your wisdom, you're getting started today.
I would have gotten really focused on sales. I think from the beginning, the focus wasn't to sell a bunch. Like I was just giving away so many things, like stickers. People were like, you have stickers? Like, here's a bunch, you know? I love giving it away. I don't like selling it. Kind of never been, up until very recently, I just didn't want to do that. But the sales aspect of it, which is honestly like the crucial part of business. So like me not doing that from the beginning and kind of having a focus of just enjoying the journey was not the best move, because focusing on sales would have led to so many more options. So I for sure think Shopify would be a big one for people starting off. Getting on Amazon too, and a lot of the things that y'all are teaching, like you can go through a pretty structured plan, like almost like an education plan, to find a product that works and then sell it. And then through that process of like learning how to do that, you just learn so much about everything. And it kind of seems silly to think about, but you got to make money, right? And I talk to so many people like, I want to start this community, you know, and like I just want a community of people that this, and I'm like, you can't do that. Like I tried to do that. Yeah, you're like and the thing that I get most excited about is just talking to people. These kind of like sparks of connection because people want to connect with people, but it's really hard to kind of bridge that gap or like make that initial start. Once you start talking, like everybody can talk, but it's like, how do you start? And these just act as a really easy intro for people where they can say, hey, what's that sticker? Or like, I love that. Like, what is that about? What's your story? Or like, I have a story. Like, and so all sorts of crazy experiences where people like share about strangers walking up to them. And it's usually, oh yeah, look, a great story. Well, what are you doing? And then it creates this opportunity for people to like really connect around their stories. So
Zach, thanks a lot for coming into the studio. It's been awesome hearing your story. It's been an inspiration for me. I know the hairs on my arm stood up a few different times throughout this, so I really appreciate you sharing your story as well as some of the tips and tricks and tactics that have worked well for you in your business.
Thanks for having me out.